The rest of the candidates are in New York or in various capitals. They have been canvassing and campaigning for a long time. So we have some catching up to do. And hopefully we shall also soon be in situ in New York and canvass the votes of the members. Here in Kampala, what have we done so far? Two things we have done. One, the candidate, Olara Otunnu, together with the delegation, have made the rounds of members of the Security Council who are based in Kampala. Not all of them are based in Kampala. The permanent members are all here, and then I think we have maybe 5 other members, elected members, also in Kampala. We've done bilateral calls, courtesy calls on all of them. And then a very big thing happened yesterday when the president convened an encounter with all members of the Security Council who are based in Kampala to let them know directly from him his own commitment and the commitment of the government of Uganda for this candidature. And that took place yesterday at State House. So that is where we are in terms of what has been done in Kampala. We hope very soon, when the waivers come through, we'll begin with New York. That is where the action is, the seat of the United Nations. And it will take time canvassing support and expressing our views and exposing our candidature to members of the United Nations, particularly members of the Security Council. Thereafter, we might also make inroads into selected capitals, depending on time, but we'll begin with the United Nations in New York. So that is really roughly where we are in terms of the state of play.
What would it mean if Uganda sought a U.S. travel ban waiver to support Ambassador Dr. Olara Otunnu's UN Secretary General campaign? If Uganda were to formally request that the United States grant a waiver or remove travel restrictions affecting Olara Otunnu in order to facilitate his campaign for the position of United Nations Secretary General, it would represent a significant diplomatic development. Such a move would suggest that the Ugandan government had decided to actively support one of its citizens for one of the world's most influential international offices. A country's endorsement of a candidate for UN Secretary General is a major foreign policy decision. Governments typically invest diplomatic resources, engage foreign capitals, and lobby UN member states in support of their nominee. If Uganda were to take this path, it would signal that Kampala considers Otunnu a candidate capable of representing not only Uganda, but also Africa on the global stage. One of the most immediate implications would be a shift in Uganda's diplomatic posture. Olara Otunnu has had a long and distinguished international career, including serving as a senior UN official. Domestic political differences, while important within Uganda, would become secondary if the government concluded that securing the UN's top position for a Ugandan served the national interest. National unity behind an international candidate often strengthens that candidate's credibility. When governments speak with one voice, other countries may view the nomination as more stable and serious. Conversely, if domestic divisions remain visible, foreign governments may question the depth of support behind the candidates. And we thank President Museveni for supporting Olara Otunnu. Seeking a waiver would also acknowledge an important reality about the selection process for the UN Secretary General. Unlike national elections, the position is filled through intensive diplomacy. Candidates travel extensively to meet presidents, foreign ministers, ambassadors, and permanent representatives at the United Nations. Personal diplomacy plays an important role in building trust and explaining a candidate's vision. If travel restriction prevented such engagement, supporters would argue that the candidate's ability to compete fairly would be reduced. A waiver, therefore, would be viewed as an effort to ensure that diplomatic outreach is not unnecessarily constrained. The international implication would extend beyond Uganda. The United States is one of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, each possessing veto power over the Secretary General selection process. Maintaining constructive engagement with Washington is therefore an important aspect of any serious campaign. A request for a waiver would not necessarily imply support by the United States for the candidacy. Rather, it would simply seek to enable travel and diplomatic engagement while the selection process unfolds. From Africa's perspective, such a campaign could attract significant attention. Many African leaders have long argued that the continent deserves stronger representation in global governance. A Ugandan candidate with substantial UN experience could become a focal point for broader conversations about Africa's leadership in multilateral institutions. However, obtaining continental support is rarely straightforward. The African Union often seeks consensus around major international appointments, and multiple African candidates can divide regional backing. Building a united African position would therefore be one of the campaign's most important challenges. Even if travel barriers were removed, success would still depend on extensive diplomacy. Candidates must persuade a broad range of countries with different political priorities and strategic interests. They also need to demonstrate administrative competence, diplomatic skill, independence, and ability to manage one of the world's most complex international organizations. The campaign would likely focus on issues such as conflict prevention, peacekeeping reform, sustainable development, climate change, humanitarian response, human rights, and institutional effectiveness. Otunnu's previous work on children's and armed conflict could be a central element of his message, highlighting decades of international public service. Domestically, government support for such a campaign could have symbolic importance. It would demonstrate that Uganda is willing to promote its citizens for high-profile international leadership roles regardless of internal political competition. Such an approach would enhance Uganda's image as a country that values diplomatic expertise and international engagement. There would also be challenges. Any government supporting a candidate would need to convince other states that the nominee would serve independently once elected. The UN Secretary General is expected to act in the interests of the entire international community rather than any single country. Ultimately, even a successful waiver would represent only one step in a much longer process. The decisive factors remain the consultation within the UN Security Council and the subsequent appointment by the UN General Assembly. A travel waiver would facilitate diplomacy, but it would not determine the outcome. If Uganda were to seek such a waiver, it would likely be interpreted as a strong signal of official confidence in Olara Otunnu's international credentials and willingness to invest diplomatic capital in a campaign for one of the world's most important multilateral offices. At the same time, the success of such a bid would continue to depend on a broad international support, consensus building among UN member states, and the formal selection procedures established under the UN Charter. This is what I have for you. Thank you so much for watching. I am Takwo Wilfred.